Hi, welcome to the bookshelf where we talk politics, philosophy, and religion from an African perspective. This is the deep dive series where we do a close reading of a selected book from the bookshelf. In this season, we are looking at Copeland's Enfleshing Freedom. This episode will focus on chapter 3, which is titled Marking the Body of Jesus, the Body of Christ. In this chapter, Copeland seeks to draw out some of the implications of the relations between Christology and anthropology by focusing on the marked body of Jesus of Nazareth. Using theological anthropology, Copeland protests what she calls the imperial word or the anti-logos that dismisses the body of Christ and seeks to decreate the human body. Copeland contextualizes the body of Jesus within the Roman Empire. According to Copeland, the Roman Empire rendered the body of Jesus a refugee, colonized, and regulated body. This was done through military occupation and exploitative tax policies. Galilee did not take this lying down though. Even though they did not undertake open rebellion, they did offer persistent resistance. Consequently, Jesus was born amidst the tensions between Rome and Galilee. Jesus advanced a prophetic praxis on behalf of God. At the center of the praxis were the bodies of the common people. Through exorcism and healing, Jesus decisively changed the village body. He did this in 3 ways. First, he included the excluded at the table. Second, his performance of masculinity subverted the norms. Third, he gave his body for the other, thereby exercising his power and freedom in service of the reign of God. Copeland considers the marked bodies ensnared in the imperial order. In particular, she attends to homosexual bodies. To this end, she explores some of the markers that empire uses to categorize and handle bodies: race, gender, sex, and sexuality. Copeland starts out with the claim that globalization is the re-racialization of the world. This means globalization is predicated on the same assumptions as colonization. She further highlights that race and gender function as co-constitutive in the empire. This points to the intersectional differences between black and white womanhood. To explore race and racism, Copeland turns to Eduardo Bonilla Silva, who talks of colorblind racism. This concept looks at the dynamic of race between and within race groups. She uses the New Orleans disaster as a case in point. Using the concept of colorblind racism, Copeland shows the complexities and inconsistencies in the process of constituting racial identities. She then appeals to the story of Jesus that can help us to break the oppressive features of these markers. By exploring sex and sexuality, Copeland is trying to expose another aspect of the imperial logic. She explores empire's treatment of homosexuality. She talks of 2 types of homophobia: malevolent homophobia and benign homophobia. Malevolent homophobia happens when empire entices and intimidates its ordinary subjects to react to gay and lesbian people with panic. Benign homophobia happens when empire permits its privileged subjects to respond with curiosity, experimentation, and tokenism. Looking at the Catholic Church's treatment of homosexuality, Copeland calls our attention to the complicity of the church in including both malevolent and benign homophobia. She then brings Jesus into the discussion by posing the question, can Jesus be an option for gays and lesbians? She answers this question by saying, if Jesus is not an option for gays and lesbians, then he cannot be an option. She pushes the boundaries of our thinking about homosexuality further. Copeland seeks to inscribe homosexuality onto the flesh of Christ. She explains that by inscribing a queer mark on the flesh of Christ, I neither propose nor insinuate that Jesus Christ was homosexual. By inscribing the queer mark, I recognize that this mark poses epistemological challenges for theology. To address these epistemological challenges, she turns to Robert Goss, who takes the experience of homophobic oppression as a starting point for a queer Christological reflection. Goss challenges the abusive use of the cross to justify the explicit or implicit oppression and violence against gay and lesbian people, as well as gay and lesbian acquiescence, interiorized oppression. Copeland describes crucifixion as Jesus' basileia solidarity. All this is based on the hermeneutical assumption that all Christology is interpretation, reflecting on the queer inscription on the flesh of Christ. Copeland concludes that in Jesus, God critiques any imperial or ecclesial practice of body exclusion and calls all unceasingly to a new practice of inclusion and liberation. Copeland concludes the chapter by challenging the church to engage in Jesus' basileia solidarity. To elaborate on what she means, she says that in the same way that theological analysis cannot ignore the oppressed, the church also can't. The oppressed are not an addendum of the body of Christ. Rather, they constitute the body of Christ. The moment religious or ecclesiastical practices exclude or make invisible any body, they cease to be a body of Christ. The body of Christ cannot be without the recognition of marginalized bodies. She closes the chapter by reminding us that the body of Christ is complex and that it is important to keep this in mind when we engage in fellowship as a church. Comment, share, like, and subscribe. And please feel free to recommend a book you would like me to do an analysis on. This has been Obageng. Thank you.